Welcome back. All right, so people who've been subscribers for a while, sometimes non-subscribers too, will know that I do videos every year where I try to rank the best players at each position. And I know it's going to cause a lot of consternation and disagreement, but sometimes the debate's fun to have, right? Especially when it comes to defensemen. Talking about who the best defenseman is, well, we all have different ideas of what a good defenseman is. To me, a good defenseman is the guy who prevents the goaltender from getting beat. The guy who prevents the 1-on-0, the 2-on-1, the 3-on-2. The guy who can defend the 2-on-1 well. The player who's smart in his own zone and knows how to prevent the goals from going in their net. The offensive side is nice. It's great to have the offensive point man. If you can find a guy who can do both, that to me is the best defenseman. You can find a guy who can play great at his own end, and he's capable of putting in a goal or two at the other end, and he can make that good first pass. He can get the puck in the other zone and know how not to give it up and not to end up being a victim of a 2-on-0 the other way. Those are my favorite defensemen. What I have on the board right now is a lot of defensemen. A ton. I think it's like 20. I think I got 20 of them up here. And yet, even though I've also got a list here of others, there will be plenty of people saying, but what about? Because unlike other positions and unlike other awards, we all have different ideas of what makes a good defenseman. And when stats don't necessarily back up our favorites, it's easy to say, okay, well, you're using that stat. The real stat is, and that's the thing with defense too. So this is ranked according to scoring until you get down to here. And from here on, I've added some other names who are not in the top 20 in scoring, but are definitely noteworthy. Tyson Barrie is the leading scorer among defensemen. He plays 21 minutes and 52 seconds a game. He has 4 goals and 26 assists. Yes, he plays with Connor McDavid. Yes, he plays with Leon Draisaitl. Yes, he's having a career year in part because he plays with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. But he's also having an excellent year. I don't think he gets Norris votes, but we'll see. Because usually the defenseman that gets the most points will end up getting some votes. And that's where the discussion comes in of, yeah, but is he the best defenseman? Is he the best defenseman that year? Victor Hedman, to me, is the best defenseman in the National Hockey League. And I mean that. I think he is the best at doing exactly what I said, at both ends of the ice, and just physically, he's an absolute beast on the ice. 29 games, 6 goals, 23 assists, 29 points. Might be having his best season, too. So it's hard to argue against Victor Hedman. 25 minutes and 34 seconds a game, and he won the Norris Trophy in 2018. So he's got that pedigree, and he's already won it once. And if not for injury, I think he would have won it at least once of the last 2 seasons as well. So as long as he stays healthy, I think it's his award to lose. But John Carlson, there are Caps fans who will say he kind of got robbed last year. 23 minutes and 51 seconds of ice time for him. 29 games, 6 goals, 19 assists, 25 points. He has never won the Norris Trophy. And again, Caps fans feeling kind of disrespected that John Carlson hasn't had that privilege of being the Norris Trophy winner. Jeff Petrie, Montreal fans, we'll talk a lot about him. 29 games, 11 goals, 14 assists, 25 points. The 11 goals, that's a lot. 22 minutes and 29 seconds on average. His defensive game isn't too shabby either. So he'll get consideration. But again, where the issue comes in for me with defensemen is I just think Hedman's better. Quinn Hughes. The interesting thing with Quinn Hughes out of Vancouver shows how interesting the concept of who the best defenseman might be really is. So 33 games, 2 goals, 23 assists, 35 points. Or 25 points. 22 minutes and 44 seconds average ice time per game. Quinn Hughes has started scoring less, but he's playing better defensively. What that tells me is he's not really at Norris caliber, because the Norris caliber guys, like Hedman, can do both at the same time. Have the really solid defensive game and know when to take those chances. And for Hughes is still figuring that out. So he's still young. There was one publication that predicted he was going to win the Norris this year, and I remember seeing that prediction and going, yeah, no, not yet. Let's just go ahead and hold off. I know it's the most exciting blue line prospect the Canucks have, I think, ever had. The best defenseman they've ever had. I think that's what we'll be saying about him 10, 15 years from now, maybe even 5 years from now. But he's not there yet. So he's still working on making sure he's got every part of his game working at the same time. Drew Doughty. So I'm wearing Kings because Doughty's had kind of a bounce back year. 28 games, 7 goals, 17 assists. He's playing 26 minutes and 27 seconds per game. And he did win Norris in 2016. Now, people will point out, well, Doughty was on a team that played badly last year. Yes, but Doughty definitely was not playing that well either. He definitely took a step back last year. I didn't come down on him as hard as a lot of other people did, but this year's been a really good bounce back year for him. And he seems to be enjoying the game a little bit more than last year. Last year he seemed kind of miserable at points. There was a t-shirt in Vancouver about how miserable he was at one point. So Dougie Hamilton, 29 games, 3 goals, 20 assists, 23 points for him, 22 minutes and 38 seconds of average ice time. I don't see Hamilton as necessarily being Norris level. So we'll come back to Doughty. Doughty, beast on both ends of the ice. I'm not sure I see Dougie Hamilton the same way. Excellent offensive instincts, very good, solid all-around defenseman who seems to get better every year. But I don't know that I see him as a serious Norris contender. It may hurt him that there's other defensemen on that team that may be seen as better defensemen. And Slavin immediately comes to mind. He's on this side of the board here. Neil Pionk, 30 games, 3 goals, 20 assists, 23 points for Winnipeg, 22 minutes and 20 seconds average ice time. No, he is not a serious Norris contender, but it is noteworthy that Pionk was a guy that when they picked him up, a lot of people said, well, this is a terrible move for Winnipeg, and it's turned out to be a pretty smart move by Cheveldayoff. Morgan Riley, same numbers. 30 games, 3 goals, 20 assists, 23 points. He plays 24 minutes and 1 second per game, meaning if you go by scoring per 60 minutes on the ice, Pionk is ahead of Riley. But Morgan Riley sometimes gets overrated by Toronto because he's in Toronto, but I think he's underrated outside of Toronto as well. I think if he played for Carolina, I think if he played for an LA, I think if he played for a team that people don't have this really emotional attachment to, either pro or negative, I think we'd see a much stronger likelihood that people would be arguing in favor of Riley. To me, he's not at that level, but he's definitely been very good this year. Darnell Nurse, 33 games, 9 goals, 14 assists, 23 points. He's played 25 minutes and 32 seconds per game. He is getting overplayed. In the absence of Clefbaum, he is being played probably a bit too much. He's been good. He's had his down points as well. I don't see him as Norris level, but I've always said that I thought Nurse had that potential to be a really good defenseman in the NHL. And again, with defensemen, it just takes them a bit longer. When you're a defenseman and you're making mistakes, you don't have anybody behind you to cover. You're a forward, you make mistakes. Well, you got a couple line mates, you've got the defenseman behind you can cover. But as a defenseman, sometimes you just don't have any cover. And when you're playing that much, if you make mistakes, they're going to get amplified because you're on the ice a lot. So let's say we had mistakes per 60 minutes. And so his mistake level was actually lower than, say, Pionk. All right? But he plays 3 more minutes per game. So the odds of him making a mistake in a game goes up. Sam Girard, I don't think that's an actual stat, but someday it will be. Sam Girard, 26 games, 5 goals, 17 assists, 22 points. Time per game, 23 minutes, 27 seconds. And if you haven't been watching Colorado, you're probably underrating Girard. Girard's been absolutely fantastic. So with Makar out with an injury and with just other blue line injuries that Colorado's gone through, Girard has been absolutely fantastic for the Avs. And so it's easy for him to kind of just slide under the radar for Colorado on a team that's very, very good. And that may be used as well. Much like with Barry, you might say, well, yeah, but look who Girard plays with. But he's been absolutely excellent. Shea Theodore, 24 games, 5 goals, 17 assists, 22 points. Same numbers as Girard. Plays 22 minutes and 50 seconds a game. Almost the same. The difference being Shea Theodore is seen as a future Norris winner. And I know when this was being said about him last year, and I've heard it a couple of times this year, not as much as last year, again, I thought, yeah, it's great to look at a guy and see a future Norris winner, but you've got a lot of really good defensemen in the NHL. I did a video over a year ago about how many really good defensemen there are in the NHL right now, and just how difficult it is to just isolate on one and say, that's your trophy winner this year. Again, for me, I'd go with Hedman. I'm sure that the comment section will have various other defensemen in there as well. But Theodore, I think he kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. I think with Vegas, because they win as a team, it's easy to overlook, say, like Mark Stone. I think Mark Stone right now might be the best two-way forward in the game. The amount of steals he gets per game is absolutely ridiculous. But just playing in Vegas actually kind of hurt him because they're seen as just a really, really good team from top to bottom. Does that hurt Theodore as well? Chris Letang, 29 games, 5 goals, 17 assists, 22 points, 24 minutes and 38 seconds average ice time. Letang's had a very solid season. So he's been up and down, of course. There's always the health concern. There's always the injury concern when it comes to Chris Letang. But when he's healthy and when he's playing well, he is one of the better defensemen in the NHL. Don't see him as necessarily being Norris level, but there he is on the board. Nick Leddy, 31 games, 1 goal, 20 assists, 21 points. Plays 21 minutes and 17 seconds average. And, of course, he had 3 assists last night just to get on this board this morning. I know what you're doing, Nick Leddy. So, yeah, obviously not Norris level, but over an 82-game season, that would project out to about 50 points. That's fantastic. Kudos to him. Thomas Chabot. This is another defenseman. You hear people talking about it, they go, hey, this guy may win a Norris Trophy. Okay, 30 games, 4 goals, 16 assists, 20 points. Chabot's the reason I don't have plus-minus on the board, because I know that gets used by voters, and I know it does. I know they look at the plus-minus and they go, that's a good indicator of defensive play. And I think that's something that hurts some defensemen. It would probably hurt Chabot this year. But he plays 26 minutes and 11 seconds per game on a team that allows a lot more goals than they score. His plus-minus will be bad. Chabot, good defenseman, and once Ottawa comes out on the other side, he will get more consideration for a Norris Trophy. Aaron Ekblad, 29 games, 10 goals, 10 assists, 20 points, plays 25 minutes and 13 seconds per game. Following the theme of Barkov and Huberdeau, yes, Ekblad might be the best kept secret on the blue line in the National Hockey League. How much longer that's a secret, it depends on what they do when they get to the playoffs. If they flame out in the first round, then you don't get a lot of attention. However, if they move on, and especially if they get to, like, say, the semifinals, that's where guys like Ekblad will get a lot more attention, and Huberdeau will get a lot more attention. Ekblad's been very good. He's already at double digits in goals. He's on pace for, again, over an 80-game season, almost 30 goals, and he's improved defensively a lot from where he was a couple of years ago. So now we get into the ones that weren't in the top scoring. Guys who didn't score 20 points, but I want to discuss a little bit. Brent Burns, 27 games, 5 goals, 10 assists. He plays the most ice time per game in the league, 26 minutes and 44 seconds. He's on the ice a lot. He won the Norris in 2017, which started a firestorm of whether or not he should have won it. I don't see him getting any votes this year, but the fact he's playing the most of any defenseman in the league, I respect him for that. And I think he's been better this year than last year, to be honest. Alex Pietrangelo has only played 18 games, 2 goals and 8 assists. His ice time, though, at 25 minutes and 27 seconds per game, is one of the highest. Now, not having played enough games is going to hurt him. He's not going to be one of the front runners for Norris, but Pietrangelo has made a huge difference in Vegas, and when he's not in the lineup, you can see the difference on that blue line. So Pietrangelo, who in St. Louis probably deserved more consideration for Norris's than he was getting, now we're likely going to see the same in Vegas because he plays on the same team as Shea Theodore. Do they end up splitting votes? Does it end up being a situation where they're not going to win it because they're both on the same team, or is it going to be like Nashville, where yeah, you can pick one of them because one of them's great that year? And speaking of which, there's Roman Josi. Roman Josi, last year's winner, 25 games, 2 goals, 14 assists, 16 points. He's playing 25 minutes and 15 seconds per game. Very slow start to the season. Really rough start to the season. And again, coming back to the plus-minus argument, his plus-minus has been ugly this year. And everybody's pretty aware of the slow start he got off to. So I don't see him as a Norris contender this year because it's that tough. It's really, really tough to win that award. Miro Heiskanen, I'll throw him on the board because people say that if I don't, then I'm probably not willing to praise him because I'm a fan of the Stars. Heiskanen, 3 goals, 12 assists in 26 games. He's got 24 minutes and 42 seconds ice time per game. I don't see him as a Norris Trophy winner. I see him as a very, very good top 2 defenseman. I think he's been great for Dallas. He may eventually hit that level. I don't see him at that level yet. Zach Werenski, because I have to pick one of the Columbus defensemen to talk about, and I want to talk about Werenski because I think he's been the better of the two. Between he and Seth Jones, both had a rough start to the season. They've both picked it up since then, but Seth Jones' start to the season was abysmal. Werenski, 3 goals and 10 assists in 24 games. He plays 24 minutes and 38 seconds of ice time per game. Werenski's a very good defenseman, may not be scoring goals at a rate that he had last year, but he's been very good for Columbus. And again, it shows just how deep the league is when it comes to very, very good defensemen. And the last one I'm going to talk about and isolate with stats is Adam Fox with the New York Rangers. 24 minutes and 19 seconds of ice time, 2 goals and 14 assists. And Ranger fans will tell you he's magic out there. And this year, I think he's been better than last year. I think he's learning fast. And again, I could say, yeah, he's going to be a future Norris winner. There's a lot of guys on this board who could be future Norris winners. And it seems to me that if you're a voter, you might have a harder time right now deciding on best defenseman than ever. We're going to have a shortened season, which I think makes it more difficult because you have fewer games to really figure all this out, and then you're done, right? By 26 fewer games this year than normal. And then with the squash schedule, you've got a greater chance of injury. And just we may end up seeing somebody end up winning this who just goes on a really good streak of games. Like has a really good month. That really good month over a shorter schedule is more important than it would be during a regular season. So also because people in the comment section, in case you can't see this very well, people in the comment section always kind of have, I always picture them kind of with that expression because I didn't mention their player because I hate that player, I guess. Mikhail Sergachev in Tampa. Good season for him. He started scoring goals as well. It took him a while to get the first one. Jacob Chychrun in Arizona. Very much overlooked. Very good defenseman. He's rounding into his own, and he's made it so that Oliver Ekman-Larsson is starting to drop in terms of ice time and prominence on that blue line. Jacob Slavin in Carolina will always get some consideration just for how good he is defensively. John Klingberg, going back to Dallas. Klingberg, I still would put Klingberg probably a little bit ahead of Heiskanen in terms of the best defenseman in Dallas, but it's really close. Charlie McAvoy. McAvoy's had a good season for Boston. Didn't wait forever to get his first goal like last season. And yeah, he may end up being a guy who gets votes at some point too. Being in Boston may help. It's an increased profile, right? Philip Hronek. I want to talk about best kept secrets. Watch a Detroit game and watch how Hronek's developed this year. Hronek's a big part of the reason why Detroit's record's getting more and more respectable. He's putting up a lot of points on a team that doesn't score. It says a lot. And so while, again, Hronek's not going to end up in the top tier for Norris, when Detroit gets better, he may. Ryan Ellis, hurt right now for Nashville. Excellent defenseman. They miss him greatly when he's out. Seth Jones had, as I said, a miserable start to the season. He started picking it up. Seth Jones, I think he gets too much criticism from some, and I think he gets too much praise from others. And I think the reality is probably somewhere in the middle. He's a pretty good defenseman. He's an absolute workhorse. He can play a ton. Is he always great defensively? No. So that's just I think it's somewhere in the middle. There are those that can't stand the player, and there are those who will pick him to win Norris, as one of the publications I read for the yearbook predicted. He's not winning the Norris this year. Cale Makar. Makar, of course, beset by injuries this year, but when he's healthy, he is one of the best defensemen in the league. The Makar versus Hughes debate is still out there on some level. I would still take Makar over Hughes, only because I think Makar is that good, not because I'm not a Quinn Hughes fan. I am absolutely a Quinn Hughes fan, especially with the way he's been playing lately. He's got a lot better. So, yeah, Makar, Adam Pelech, Ryan Pulock, you can't separate the two, which is why neither of them end up winning or getting a lot of consideration for the Norris. But those two together, if we had an award for best defensive pair in the NHL, which I think would be a really interesting award if you think about it. The best defensive pair award would be sort of like you have the Jennings, the right that goes to the best goals against average, so it's your best tandem. Why not have a defenseman for the best pairing? So that you may have a situation where you go, yeah, Hedman's the best defenseman in the league. But you know what? These two guys here in New York, the Islanders, Pulock and Pelech, together they're fantastic. That's your tandem of the year. I think something like that would be fun. And I've talked before about, and it's now kind of an agreed thing, that a Rod Langway Award for defensive defenseman would be nice too. Jonas Brodin has had a very under-the-radar good season for the Minnesota Wild. I wanted to put him on the board. Ivan Provorov in Philly has not had quite the fallback that one might have feared when Matt Niskanen retired. Niskanen came in and helped turn around Provorov's game. 2 years ago, Provorov was having his struggles, and Niskanen really settled things down. This year, Provorov's been pretty darn good on a team that does have defensive issues. And then you get into former winners. So Duncan Keith, who won it in 2010, 2014, Hawks fans will tell you he's still very good. I would agree that he's still a good defenseman. I would not put him at the Norris level. Mark Giordano, 2019, fell off last year, and this year it really hasn't come back. It feels like they're dropping his ice time as his career likely winds down over the next couple of years. Or at the very least, they're just trying to preserve his career so they don't have to worry about it winding down so much. May have overplayed him a little bit as Norris here. Erik Karlsson, of course, won the Norris in 2012 and 2015. Now the complaint is that he won it because he was great offensively. I would counter with Erik Karlsson was just as good offensively and defensively as any other winners, but his lack of foot speed all of a sudden with injuries seemed to cause that defensive side of it to start to lack. This year, I think he's been better. This year, I think he's been better than last year. He's not back at Norris level, though. He is still playing a ton, though, for San Jose. They're kind of like, okay, we're paying him how much? He's playing. Zdeno Chara won it in 2009. He's been very good for Washington. His overall numbers have been pretty darn good, and Washington has to feel like, hey, this is great, and it's a bargain. And for Chara, he looks like he could play for next year too. If Washington decides to bring him back next year, I wouldn't blame them. It's been a really good fit. And then I'm closing out on PK Subban, who also won the Norris Trophy in 2013. And again, the criticism was that he was just a pure offensive defenseman. The defense wasn't any good. I would agree his defense recessed after that, but that year, that 2012-2013 season, he was pretty good. That was also a lockout-shortened season. So we may end up seeing somebody end up winning it this year that's kind of an out of the blue. That's where maybe Petrie gets more consideration. Maybe Karlsson wins it this year. Maybe this is the year Karlsson wins it. But again, my vote right now would go to Victor Hedman. As long as he can stay healthy, I really honestly think he's the best defenseman in the league. And the best part is there's still going to be people who have that face going on because of the defensemen that aren't on the board. At some point, I have to say, okay, that's enough names. We've gone far enough. That's enough of names. And, yeah, we'll see which other names get brought up in the comment section. There's always going to be a bunch. A lot. So that's how it works with defensemen. All right, so let me know your thoughts. The 2021 Norris winner. Somebody on the board, somebody else you're thinking of. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.